Hey everybody, it's me again. How's it going? Um, I think I'm in the right spot now. I feel like that I was in the wrong spot a bit ago, and that's why I'm 15 minutes later than I was supposed to be. So if any of you already saw me somewhere else, um, that's because I think I was in the wrong spot. But now I'm here, and I'm going to answer a few of the questions which I already answered over here again. So you guys, if you saw it twice, will get to see this 2 times, which is great. Okay, so our first question comes from Nancy Lopez, who asked the question, what business, sales, branding, etc. preparation do I need for my business before I start trying to sell my product to wholesalers? I make jewelry. I want to sell it online and through other boutiques. What do I need to have ready before I start contacting them? Great question. So my first question, or my first response to that is, to our first question, is do the bare minimum that you can on the branding side of things, and on the sales side, the like actually figure it out side, do it full out. Like really think about how you're going to sell this stuff. Really be serious about it. Make sure that you can find that product market fit, that you have a process for communicating with your target audience. Because if you don't have a process for communicating with that target audience, you won't know, is it the thing I'm selling the reason that it didn't connect, or is it that I just didn't do it correctly and that's why it didn't happen. So on the process side, you take it really seriously. You pretend like I'm really selling this thing. But on the branding side, even on the product side, you really don't need to have any of that stuff actually existing. You only need the bare minimum. You know who's really good at this are the As Seen on TV people. Why do you think when you look at As Seen on TV, Harrington, what's his first name? Last name is Harrington. Anyway, he's the guy who invented the As Seen on TV whole thing. And Kevin Harrington. And he basically figured out that you can just sell stuff that you don't actually have. That's why it takes 4 to 6 to 8 weeks if you buy something on those As Seen on TV things to come in, because they essentially do all the advertising as if the product actually exists and is ready to go. They market it, they do the infomercial thing, they sell it, and then if they get enough sales, they actually place the order, and then it shows up 8 weeks later and everybody gets their stuff. If they don't get enough orders, then they just pivot and they don't sell any of it to anybody. Like if it's not profitable, they don't do it. So I always like that idea as well, is to focus on the picture of it, but if all the back stuff doesn't exist, that's okay. So if you know how and who you're communicating to, you have to take that seriously. You have to take just enough picture to put in front of people that it seems like a real thing and they're actually making a decision to buy or not. And then if you match up all 3 of those things, then you're going to prove out that it works or prove out that it doesn't work. And if it works, you scale it up. And if it doesn't work, then you can pivot and pivot and pivot, and you didn't waste a lot of time or money. So that's my thoughts on that one. Second question is also from Nancy Lopez. Do I have to choose to sell my products only online direct to consumer, or can I also wholesale as well? What should I look out for when doing so? Great question. So first point is, if there are 2 different sales processes. If you're online, you're going to be more of an e-commerce type process, at the top of the funnel, feed people in from traffic, cycle it down, conversion, and then sell. If it's online. If it's a wholesale sale, you're probably going to be more of a business to business type sale, where you're going to have more of a sales guy type relationship where they're prospecting, trying to find the right people and convincing them to buy. That's going to be kind of the first 2 differences that you'll have to be aware of, and do whichever one you're going to. I wouldn't think you'd be able to do both in earnest simultaneously. You're going to need to focus on one or the other. So I would say pick one and then kind of go in the direction whichever one you have the most experience in or the most opportunity in. But if you want to plan it out as if you were going to do both, just to make sure you get your numbers right, I would look at what's my retail price, what's my wholesale price, and what's my manufacturing price. And at each one of those levels, you have to understand how each, like think of those as three different people. Right now, if you sell retail, you're kind of all three of those. If you sell wholesale, then you're really just going to be the manufacturer to wholesale. And then you need to know how the wholesaler is going to make money between wholesale and retail pricing. So you have to make sure that you're able to be in a market and you've set your price such that the wholesale person is going to understand why it's valuable for them to put the effort in to make the sale for you, essentially. So that comes with margin, right? So you need to be able to show that, and that's a good reason to do the retail side because you can prove it and then show it back to the wholesale people. You could say, look, when I sell retail, I generate, I sell $100 and the wholesale price is $20. And so that wholesale to retail spread is $80, which gives us plenty of room for marketing and profit. And then in your brain, in the back of your head, you're thinking, yeah, $20 wholesale, I'm perfectly fine with because from a manufacturing perspective, it only cost me 10. And I'm perfectly happy with that $10 spread down there underneath wholesale. So you really have to kind of think through how those three price points all kind of fit together from a profitability perspective and execution perspective. Because margin, of course, you don't get to keep your gross margin. You only get to keep your net profit. So you have to make sure your gross profit is big enough that your operational and sales machines can function in order to create that net profit at the end. And so you need to know, even if you don't want to be the one to do it, if you're going to sell wholesale, you need to know the benefit to the wholesaler who's going to sell to the retail person at the end. So you can put that as part of your value prop in your B2B sales process. And then, yeah, that's all I've got to say about that. Just be careful of your pricing so that everybody knows, so that you know how everyone makes money at each stage. Okay, next question. Morgan Katz. What strategies do you use to build your network? I work with companies to help them maintain their season tickets to concert venues, sports teams, etc. I'm very active on LinkedIn and in-person networking events prior to COVID, but looking for new options to add in. I'm looking for ways you use networking groups or associations to develop more relationships or get even more buy-in with large customers. Great question. So I am not a huge fan of networking for networking's sake. So and not that they're bad. I just has never worked. It hasn't been my thing to like go to true networking events or networking things. As you're suggesting here, you don't really need, like, you're not wanting to do that either. It doesn't sound like. I'm glad to hear you're doing LinkedIn. I know a lot of people that have a lot of success with LinkedIn. That's, you know, the digital side of things. But what I found to be super helpful are associations or maybe recreational things that have your target audience in them, but that are not there from like a networking perspective, that are there more from a recreational or enthusiasm perspective, like an enthusiast perspective. So like, for example, if I want to target, you know, let's say men in 40 to 60 who own businesses who are, you know, in a 5 million revenue and up range, I join a Porsche club as opposed to trying to join a networking group that has those people, because a Porsche club probably has a lot of the people that I want to talk to, and then now we have something in common and we can just stand there and talk about cars and create that relationship. And then and you always end up saying, and what do you do? Like, so then you just tell them what you do. And then like people have a tendency to want to help each other when they have like a friendly relationship. And so I've found that if I can create those relationships through some other means, it generally always circles back around. Probably my only suggestion with that is it's not efficient to make onesie twosie sales like that. It's almost better if you're able to identify the group of people who has access to the group of people that you want to talk to, from like a strategy perspective. So it's really not the end user you want to be in the Porsche club with. It's a guy or who has a business who can help, like in one shot, get it out to a whole bunch of people and maybe make multiple sales from that one relationship that you just created. That would be strategically kind of my decision or my thought process there. Yeah, so focus on things that are fun and exciting and engaging, and then build an actual personal relationship and then go from there. my thought. Okay, Joe Nugent. What do you suggest as far as paying independent contractors who I contract to help me facilitate providing my services to my customers? I own a home inspection business and I'm turning away 5 to 8 inspections per week. I'm looking to partner with another inspection company, solopreneur, who is not as busy so I can make more money while working less. How do I do the billing? Collect from the client, then send to the other inspection company, have them collect the check, and they send me a check. Okay, great. So you're basically asking, do I use this other company as a subcontractor who represents me? Or do I give them basically a referral, hand them off, and then let them build a client and then kick it back to you? So, I mean, I guess it depends on what you want your ultimate business model to be. Do you want to be the brand that everyone is, like Empire Carpet is a good example of this. Like, right, if you call Empire Carpet and they send someone out to your house, they might send out an Empire Carpet salesperson, but the installer is just a third-party subcontractor person who has their own company and their own name. It says something different on the side of the truck. Maybe it says, maybe it says Empire Carpet, but it probably says their actual name somewhere else along there. So I would suggest probably in this case, if you want to think about enterprise value, you're probably better off using them as a subcontractor, and you have a formal subcontractor agreement with them. So so your customer is contracting with you, and you're really just doing the scheduling. And then you actually can define with your subcontractor how they represent themselves when they go in. Like when they give them a card and say, here, I'm so-and-so from home inspection, whatever, as a subcontractor to you, maybe one of the requirements is that you give them a special card to identify themselves. And I don't know how this works with licensing. Maybe it's different in your industry. So correct me if I'm wrong. But I would suggest, maybe that's part of the arrangement when you sign your subcontractor agreement, is that when you go into things, you can have your name on your shirt, but you've got to represent us. The name part of it is the problem, because I just did a home inspection. And the guy had it on his shirt, which creates a little bit of difficulty there. Anyway, point is you have to decide deliberately how you want your brand to be represented in the interaction with the customer. A lot of times the actual person who's paying the bill isn't there. Well, no, inspection could be. If they're not there, then it doesn't really matter because it's just the agents. But although you really do want them promoting you to the agents as well. So yeah, other than figuring out how they adjust how they represent your brand while they're on your job, figure out those details, and then you collect the money and you pay them. That's what my suggestion would be. Trying to send them a referral and expecting them to pay you back, I think that's okay at a small level, but if you want to really scale, I would building your brand and building your brand recognition. That's where you create your enterprise value. So yeah, I would say you contract with the client, you contract with the subcontractor, and you sit in the middle there, and it's your brand that's running the whole process. That's what I would recommend. Ashley Letourneau, any advice on setting prices for different services, niches you serve? I own a residential commercial cleaning company. Residential, I charge $35 an hour plus HST. Commercial, depending on office size, I normally charge $55 an hour plus HST. Major box doors, I charge 40 cents per square foot per visit. My friend the other day asked me to have a quote to his boss. Going in, I thought it was one store once a week, finding out that it's 3 stores every day of the week. Ooh, that's good. This threw my pricing out of whack, and I didn't know how to charge. I already shot him a quote. Definitely think I lowballed myself. Wonder how I can finalize and structure my pricing better. Well, one thing is it sounds like there was a detail missing before you sent the quote over. Obviously, you didn't know there was going to be 3 stores every day of the week, because that would have just affected what you did right there. I guess one thing that I'm wondering is what's the difference from an hourly perspective? I guess I'd want to know how much you can get done. I think maybe that's the answer. When you're talking about these different places where you would work, I would ask, based on each type, what's the speed at which you can complete the work, right? Because I think it's going to be, I don't know if it's harder to do residential than it is a big box store. Like there's part of me that thinks it's almost harder to do residential because in residential you have all this little like junk you got to deal with and all these surfaces. There's like a million little surfaces in residential, where if you're in a big box store, it's like everything's more like uniform. So maybe you can build a process that's actually more efficient and easier to go through the commercial space. It might be more profitable. So for me, whenever you're talking about pricing, well, I'm going to say this two different ways and it's going to be contradictory. Whenever you're talking about pricing, you for sure need to know what your exact costs are and how you do that at like a per unit basis. Like, what does it actually cost me to deliver this service? That's how you're going to be able to get your pricing. That's the trick, right? Like you're going to know exactly what it costs you, so that way you'll at least know if you're high or low from what it costs you to deliver each thing. So you need to know about efficiency, how quickly you can get things done, all that sort of stuff. Once you know that for all your types of services that you're offering, then the next thing you do is, what will the market bear, right? Like, just because that's my cost and this is what somebody else's cost is, if the market says I'll pay this much, and you've built a brand that will get that much, then that's what you ask for, right? So it's a little bit of a, what can you deliver, and that's what you base your pricing on. But it's also like, what will the market bear, and then like I'll take as much of that as I can get. But it does come down to knowing precisely who your business connects to, like which product type you're offering, and knowing what the cost structure is going into it. And then the other part was, it just sounds like with the 3 days thing, you just missed the fact that it was 3 stores each day. Nobody told you that. So you're gonna have to go back and say, yeah, the quote I gave you was for 1 store once a week. So multiply that times, 21 times. three stores, every day. So yeah, cool, good question. I'm always happy to talk about pricing stuff too. So reach out if you. I love pricing and efficiency calculations to figure out how that stuff works. Nicole Baptiste, is there a checklist for lack of a better word, I can use to make sure I'm covering all bases as I start a partnership with a complementary business? I'm a life habit strategist and help clients create better habits that lead to permanent weight loss, better eating habits, better morning and evening routines, stress and anxiety reduction, better sense of self and trust. I'm partnering with a local fitness person as I do not have a fitness component to my program. We're creating a separate business name. We'll conduct workshops and programs that incorporate both of our services. That means payment could either go to each of us separately for a joint gig, or we create a separate PayPal or something for joint payments. I know there are a bunch of legal things to consider. Just want a place to start. Thank you. Okay. Good question. So the answer is there a checklist? Yes, there is a checklist. In fact, I have a checklist, which I can share. I guess if Shirley wants to, I could send it with Shirley, and then, or Sean, or whoever wants to take it from me, and then they can share it to the whole group. It's actually like a 5-page thing. It's pretty comprehensive. It's very helpful. And so that's good. And then I guess you're absolutely right, to kind of create a new business with the two of you guys, because if you've got, that way then you're not really infringing on basically the new business is the marketing and brand side of the joint operations of these two companies. And then your other two companies are providing services to this company. Like, that's the way I would look at it. And that the revenue flows into this new company. And then the new company then, based on what the service is offering, pays some fixed amount for that package, right? So think of your guys' selves, like, make sure you think separately as much as you think together, because that way then if you scale up and you need to hire more of one or two of you, right, then you know kind of what your cost of that activity is and how that's separate when you hire a third person or a fourth person or a fifth person. Make sure you know what hat you're wearing in every transaction, and how you're getting financially compensated for that. And if you guys discuss that ahead of time, then you're going to know, and you'll be better off. You won't argue about it later. That like who's supposed to be getting what and what activities you're supposed to be each be responsible for. I probably one person is going to pull their weight more on the operations side of the new company, just in terms of sales and marketing or accounting or whatever. Somebody's going to do more of that work. So what does that mean? How does that person who's doing more of the work get compensated for that now or later? Usually what breaks up partnerships is one partner ends up doing more than the other one, inevitably. And there wasn't a plan in place on how that person gets compensated for that. Because as we all know, when we're wearing lots of hats, just because you're wearing that hat and not having to pay an employee for that, there's still a intrinsic opportunity cost associated with that activity. So you do need to make sure you account for that. You need to make sure you account for it even when you own the business 100%. But if you have a partner, it's even more important to account for that, because that's where arguments start. I put 30 hours in this week doing all the administrative stuff, and all you've done is the production stuff, the fun stuff, but yet we're splitting everything equal. So that doesn't work. So you got to make sure you break out each role and know how each role gets paid, and then pay everyone accordingly, and then you won't have those problems. All right, and then let's see, last question from Cheston Salisbury. How can I get better at finding, hiring, engaging resources, people to help me carry my vision forward so I can finally get out of the business and doing everything for the business? I'm trying to build a SaaS platform while trying to keep my existing digital marketing agency afloat, just enough to continue generating the monthly revenue I need. I want to get to a point I can either completely offload the digital marketing work or engage others to help build out my SaaS vision. How can I get better at finding, evaluating, and delegating all the work that needs to get done? I find myself stuck doing tasks I know I shouldn't be doing, but I've been unable to find or provide sufficient instructions, guidance, structure to resources, people capable of helping. Interesting. Good question, Cheston. So my question, so I think you need a production process. So regardless of what, regardless of who you're trying to hire, you need to understand, again, going back to the many hats things. Right now, you're probably doing production where you're wearing 5 or 6 or 20 hats that you don't, well, actually, it does sound like you realize the different hats that you're wearing. So as you break out those hats, you've got to have that all kind of, what I like to do is I document everything like on a spreadsheet. Like I just kind of like put a process list together, like this happens, that happens, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And then I try to chunk those into like roles, basically. This person could handle these 4 tasks, and this person can handle these 5 tasks. Like, so it kind of makes sense. And then you start at the first one and you say, okay, how am I going to get somebody to do this, and how much am I going to pay them to do that? And then try one, like try the easiest one. A lot of times what I like to do too when I'm hiring people, if it's something that's production focused, where they don't have to be extremely imaginative or take like a lot of ownership, they just have to kind of like execute this thing. I like to hire people like 3 at a time, with the idea that they're not going to, like, someone might not work out. And if I get 3 good ones based on how much volume I'm doing, great. But a lot of times you don't get 3 good ones. Usually you get 2. If you hire 3, you'll probably get at least 1 that really works out and is a really good fit. That's kind of my brute force approach to hiring. I don't recommend it all the time, but it does work in certain situations very well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I would say that you really do need to document, because the time that you spend documenting, it may seem a little bit tedious, but if you document all the steps, all the processes, I have a stock job description that, again, we can make that available to the group. And when I say job description, it's not so much just a job description like, oh, this is who I want. It's literal, like, this is what you do. This is how I measure your success. This is how I build things. Like, that's how it all works. And so, like, that way then it's a very clear document, so the person knows, and you know, if they're succeeding or not in the role. So it's really having a clear picture of what that production process looks like from start to finish, whether you're doing it or whether somebody else is doing it, and then chunking out the part that you want to hand off. My recommendation is don't try to do it all at once. Like, don't try to like give it away all at once. Like pieces, success. Make sure you've got one part that works, and then and it keeps working. Like, give it a couple weeks, and then next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, until you've handed off everything that you wanted to hand off. Sometimes I'm definitely not a Grant Cardone fan, but I do like his whole 10x sort of thinking concept. It does make a lot of sense. There's a little bit of a okay, ask yourself, what would I have to change if I was going to be 10 times bigger than I am right now tomorrow? What would be different? What would be the first thing that has to break, basically? And that's the thing I'm going to work on. That sometimes is a kind of a good mind game to kind of get you pointed in the right direction. Okay, I guess that's it. Those are all my questions that I had on my list here. Good stuff this month. I look forward to seeing everybody again next month. Hopefully next month I will be in my new house. We'll see. I have a house under contract in West Palm Beach, and so we'll be moving further east, that's about 20 miles east of where we are here in Wellington. So we'll be further east, just by the beach, not too far. And yeah, so maybe I'll have a different backdrop next time you guys see me. All right, that is it. See you around. Reach out if you want to talk about anything. Have a good one, you guys. Bye.